Cool.
Okay. So Maggie, do you want to tell us a little bit about why we're here today?
Sure, I'm Maggie Buckley, and I am the co-founder of Transforming Care. And we, a group of us, formed this organization in 2016. Then, of course, we had a very long pause during the pandemic. But we are parents of people with disabilities, people who used to work in the field, and friends who are interested in supporting us. And we really formed the organization to help people thrive in their homes and their communities, and to really push the idea of inclusion and people working together.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm your moderator today, Mike Rogers, from Arise, Western New York. And we are recording, everyone. So that means your voice will be recorded. If you don't want your picture on, you can keep your picture off or turn it on, your camera. But your voice will be recorded. And you see got it there. When you hit got it, that means you're consenting to being recorded. Okay, well, can you use that mouse to hit the got it? That ad there. See that?
Okay, yeah,
See over there?
got it.
All right. See, we're all learning at the same time. All right. So I'm going to start off by asking you, Maggie, what is a community of care and how is it intentional?
Well, we formed this idea a while ago of creating inclusive, intentional communities of care. And it's not a place, it's more like an idea or a way of thinking. And really, we got thinking about it after COVID and during COVID, seeing first of all how some people were able to step up and really do amazing things to care for all of us.
Yeah, let me turn a little bit so I
Okay.
can see you.
Okay.
Very good.
So we really, of course, recognized how important care was at that point. And we also recognized that there was a real need to be more caring, especially if you're vulnerable. If you're vulnerable in any way, it was much more difficult during COVID, and it's always much more difficult if you're vulnerable. However, we all need care, so we think it's an important idea to really push out there and get people involved in. So like Rosalind Carter said years ago, after she left the White House, she got very involved in care initiatives. And she said there's only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, who will be caregivers, who are caregivers, or who will need care. And so we all kind of move back and forth in those spaces, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think that everyone needs care at some point in their life as a person with a disability. We always say, you're gonna need some help sometime. You join our group, right?
right.
So, yeah.
But I think that people don't think about it so much until they need care or someone in their family needs care. And then it
Right.
becomes really critical. And in our country, we're not always doing a great job. I just, in fact, heard last night that 51% of people in this country live in caregiving deserts for childcare. So it really goes across the whole lifespan that we're not caring well for people. And it affects people's families. People have to leave jobs because they can't find care for their children. They lose their homes. So it's critical to be aware of the issue of care.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by care? Can you give us an example of something that you've dealt with in this way?
Sure. I mean, care is often just an activity that looks at the well-being of people and animals in our world. So in general, that's what care is. We have we've been talking about practices that are important to care. And we came up with accompaniment. Accompaniment is the first thing we came up with. And that is being able to engage in a mutual relationship with someone. kind of walk with them if they're going through something or if they're having a great time, but just being able to be available to somebody and close to them and develop your sense of we're a lot alike. We have some of the same needs, some of the same concerns, and we will support each other.
Okay, I just want to stop for a second and say, if anybody has a question, we're taking questions, all throughout. We're not waiting till the end, or anything like that. So if you have a question, please raise your hand either digitally, in your box like this, with your hand up physically, or, just shout out and say, I have a question. So one of the things that people might be concerned about, maybe be a little concerned about, is this a religious organization? Is this something that is gonna promote a particular faith?
It is not. It is not aligned with any particular religion. However, we do welcome faith communities, and we would hope that faith communities would step up and get involved with us and be willing to volunteer with us or work
Great.
with us and offer us spaces. But it is not a faith community.
Now, along with that, we have the political realm these days on a big level. So is it a political organization, or is it formed through politics at all?
It's not a political organization, though on our website, transformingcare.org, we do refer to advocacy, and we are always happy to post information about advocating for caregiving issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So where did this idea come from? Because I know it just didn't drop out of the clouds and say, care about people.
No,
So where did the idea come from?
well, let me just go back for a minute to the practices, and then I'll tell you where they came from. So
Sure.
the practices are accompaniment, being involved in mutual relationships with people, where both people in the relationship are empowered. Hospitality, so being welcoming and outgoing, service, engagement. We go to engagement first. Engagement where we offer things for people to do so that people are emotionally and actively involved with one another, because it gives people a better sense of belonging and a better connection if you have some kind of an emotional connection. So that could be, we're going to start art classes. We plan to go on to do cooking classes where we're cooking with friends and we're doing art with friends.
Awesome.
We'll move on to doing music with friends at some point. So again, it's just getting people engaged and finding out that they have things in common.
Awesome.
Okay, and then with service, we actually have a service that we provide, and that is that we have something called Carly's Sense for Socks. It was created back in 2016, and it's named for my daughter Carly, who loves slipper socks and always liked to volunteer. Carly is an adult with Down syndrome, so we started that, and we collect socks and we donate them primarily to Response for Love in the city. So we mostly work around Christmas time, but we'd like to work all year round. And prior to COVID, we were up to like 1,400 pairs of socks being donated.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we really want to get more people involved. It's really appreciated.
Okay.
And the last thing is spirituality. Though we're not religious, we do believe in working on spirituality. Basically looking at people's meaning and purpose in life.
So is it kind of like a holistic
It is.
type of way of doing things?
Yes. So we welcome all faiths or people of no faith, and just want people to be able to come together and derive some sense of purpose and meaning.
Now, when we think about communities of care that are intentional, where would you meet for something like this? Can you give an example? How do you meet? How do you gather?
Sure. Well, what we're doing right now is we're trying to gather in different spots in the community so that we reach different people. Cradle Beach has very generously donated their art space for our use. So I know that's a distance for people, but it is a beautiful spot. They've got a huge art room. We're gonna have our first class on June 24th, Saturday from 1 to 3:30, which we'll post later in the lunch and learn, right?
Yeah.
And so it's great there. There's a huge outdoor space as well as an indoor space for us to use. And we have an art teacher who's coming. She's a retired art teacher and an art therapist. So she has activities planned where we can work individually or we can work to create things as a group.
Very, very cool.
And then in July, we're going to be doing well, we have soup and salad Saturdays, but for summer, we're going with salad Saturdays, and we're going to be meeting at Gigi's Playhouse in Kenmore, another space that was offered to us by Gigi's Playhouse. So we can have people gather there and have food and have good discussion and conversation about this whole process of creating a caring community.
Now, you were talking earlier about different aspects of an intentional community of care. Can you go a little bit more into that? You know, you were explaining a little bit, but can you go into into the structure and how that would benefit people in our society?
Sure. So I have to say that this idea came about when we formed Transforming Care. We had the idea that we really wanted to bring a L'Arche to Buffalo. And L'Arche is an international community where people with and without disabilities live together. It's been around for a long time, over 50 years. It's not really well known. There are communities in the United States, gathered across the country, and there's also communities worldwide. So we've been actively involved with L'Arche. I have visited communities, have read tons about communities, and so we were looking at what is it about these communities that is so engaging? If you visit one, you feel immediately at home. The people who live there seem to be flourishing and thriving. And again, it's people with and without disabilities sharing a space. Usually it's just a small private home that they share. So we looked at it and thought, practices that I just mentioned is what's going on there. It's accompaniment, it's hospitality, radical kinship. We're treating people like our family. They don't have to be our biological relatives to treat people like our family. They're providing service at times to the community. So all those things coming together, we thought, we don't have to have a place to do that, or we have to have a place, but not someplace where people live. It's an idea, it's a way of life, it's a way of behaving that we can bring to the community.
Now, oftentimes with people with disabilities, I'm ad-libbing a little here.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the services and things for people with disabilities are very squared off and structured. We only have this available for people because an agency or a service organization has it. It's just for people in the disability community. How is this different?
Well, this is different because we always want to have people with and without disabilities together. And whether it's children or adults, we want everyone together. Okay, so that makes it different. And one of the things that we also looked at, there's a relatively new book out called The Good Life. And it's based on research out of Boston, out of Harvard, but it's research that's gone on for over 100 years. And what the researchers have been looking at is what makes people happy. But they don't mean happy in just a fun-loving kind of way. It means how are people experiencing well-being and how are they thriving? And what they found over 100 years, and this was not only interviewing the same people throughout their lifespan and then their kids going on and on for all these years, they have also looked at measures of health. And so what they found is what people are happy about is being in relationship. It's not money, it's not necessarily success, it's being in relationship. And that means everybody. Not just people with disabilities or not just people without disabilities, it's for everyone. That's the key factor in life. And that's what we want to open up to people. We want to focus on things that are for everyone, and relationship is for everybody.
Now, that brings me, that gives me a thought as far as when you gather in these communities, what about resources? Are resources pooled? Like you were talking about art program, you know, are there fees? How do you gather, you know, and foster that, you know, interdependence?
Well, right now, we were very generously given a grant by the Tower Foundation. So we have some money in the grant that's supporting our art program at this time. We will continue to look for more funding. We are not charging people to attend right now.
Awesome.
At some point, you know, we're going to have to increase our donation base or charge a minimal amount, but we're hoping really to just offer this to people. So, because I know that art can be a luxury for people. But so far, we've got some very generous people giving us space and giving us materials.
No, that's awesome. Another thing that comes to mind for me is that being a person with a disability, you know, there's always a question of how can I put this, of, you know, something being so regimented that only the disability community can benefit from it, can grow from it. How do these intentional communities flourish, and you know, what benefit does it have to the society? You know, what do we get out of coming together and supporting each other like this?
Well, the benefit is, first of all, relationship. That's so important. It's learning about other people and seeing that we're all in this life together. And life, as we all know it, whether you have a disability or not, can be really hard at times. And one of the things, again, learned from this study is that relationships are protective for people. They protect our minds and our bodies. So that's what we're doing for society, is showing people that these caregiving relationships, and I'm talking caregiving for everyone, not just if you have specific needs related to a disability, but we all need care of some sort.
Yeah.
And so it's showing people that they're important. And I think it's also getting people involved to the point where they realize that this has to be supported by our governments. You know, we are fighting hard to, for instance, is like for fair pay for home caregivers. So people are unaware of the tremendous need there is for care across the lifespan. And I think if people spend more time in situations like we're promoting, they will see that there's a great need and that people can actually impact that. We can make a change. We can make sure that people are cared for.
Now, we talk about, you know, caring for each other. Oftentimes, you know, our society sees people with disabilities as just kind of taking. We take, you know, we take resources. How does this show a different way of living, and you know, of co-living?
You know, what it shows, Mike, is that we all learn from each other. So people with disabilities are not just taking, they're giving. And so often people will say, and this is a sign of radical kinship, when someone can say, I went into a situation thinking I would offer help, but I was the one who helped, who got the help. I got the help because I learned something from this person's attitude or what they've been through and survived.
Now, can you give an because you said you've been around these kind of living situations. Can you give an example, of course, without names, of course, but can you give an example of where you've seen that?
Yes, I have seen it. We've been to a few different Larshes. And one in Washington DC, we've been to Jacksonville, Florida, we've been to the L'Arche in Canada, right over in Hamilton and in Erie, PA. And the people who live there without disabilities will always say that they've just gained so much more and learned so much about life living there with people who need care. And that they feel very differently about people with differences or people that need assistance than they did before they got to L'Arche. And it's and you can see it in the interactions. It's a very different kind of interaction than a place where with typically paid staff. People are truly in mutual relationship with each other. They cook together, they plan together, they celebrate together, and every meal sort of takes on this celebration. And there's a sense of hospitality that's really amazing. When we went to the L'Arche in Washington, we went for a program there, and I contacted them to say we were coming, and they said, well, you'll stay with us then. So we stayed in one of the L'Arche houses. Myself and my daughter and a friend of ours stayed there. And that's how they reach out to people constantly.
So it's kind of communal in a way.
Right.
So that gets me thinking, because traditionally, when we think about services, it's very difficult to build relationships because there's the barrier of keeping people safe, keeping them safe from abuse, making sure that the person has a good background in some state situations. How do you build friendships and build those relationships? How is this different? Because we're often told as people with disabilities, well, you can't be real friends with the people that help you because it's against regulations, and we have to make sure that nobody's being taken advantage of.
Right.
This sounds like a radically different way of looking at things. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, sure, it is and it isn't, because of course L'Arche still is mandated to follow the rules that other care organizations have. So people that live in L'Arche, people without disabilities that live there would go through the same background checks and meet all the same requirements that Medicaid has of people who are working in the field. But I think philosophically, people are encouraged to see the people they're caring for as co-living people. They're living together and sharing an environment, and each bringing their strengths and weaknesses to the environment. So it's just seen as it's just a different philosophy. And so we're looking at, promoting the shared living movement, where people without disabilities in the community are interested in offering their homes and creating a life with someone who needs more assistance, so that people can form relationships and they can be long-term. As you know, we deal with a lot of turnaround and staffing.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to have a long-term relationship with a caregiver.
Sure. Yeah. And there's so much turnaround. That brings me to a thought too. Since there's turnaround, what do you see when you have meetings of intentional care, as far as longevity, as far as commitment on behalf of the person with disabilities and the the person without disabilities coming into the situation or without visible disabilities?
Well, it's interesting because in L'Arche, though, the model is that people would come in and live there for a year or two. Now, what I've seen happen is I've seen people that have been there, because I've been looking at these large programs for 20 years. I've seen people that have been there for 10 years. They come in and they don't leave. So there is some more longevity in L'Arche than there is in other situations. But still, there is an issue with some people coming in, and of course, they can't commit to more than a year or two, and they have to move on. Now, in the L'Arche homes, because the people with disabilities are considered the core members, they have their own relationships too. So while it may be disruptive for a caregiver to leave, they have their own relationships that remain steady and constant. But also, we're looking at the shared living idea of people actually being in their own homes and offering care, because then they're not going to move on.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea, and I know I was just gonna say I'm gonna be a moderator, but this has become more of a conversation. And
Yeah.
I have to say that I was against this idea in a big way. I said, no, this is terrible. But learning more, hence the Lunch and Learn audience, I began to think differently about it, and I began to live on my own more, which kind of brought me into reality as well. So that's really awesome. With that, you said that there's no charge for the events right now. So do participants share in materials? How does that work with your events that you're going to be having?
Well, we're gonna be sharing in materials now. Now, in shared living, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
you know,
of course, there'd have to be
Yeah,
some
yeah.
sharing of costs there.
But we will be sharing, right now, we're taking care of food and we're taking care of art supplies. Down the road, sometimes we ask people if they'd like to bring a loaf of bread when they come to a soup lunch. But we're trying to take care of it now, just to build this
Great.
up.
Great. What for a person like me, what could an intentional community of care do for me?
I think, first
Just as
of
an
all,
example.
it would give you an opportunity to get out and meet new people, establish friendships, find something to do, learn to cook some interesting food down the road. And I think, our culture really pushes this idea of independence and freedom. And I think that what you learn in this is that when you're interdependent, you can thrive. When you meet people who have your back, who are concerned about how you're doing, who understand what your struggles are, it's really protective and helpful.
Talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people I know have experienced the idea that independence means you have to do it all on your own. That means you prove that you can live, kind of the old, pull yourselves out by the bootstraps, American dream. How is interdependence different in this way of thinking? What does that mean to you?
I think one way it's different is we're just acknowledging that interdependence is important, and it always happens. I mean, people will say that they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps or that they were completely independent. But that's really not the case for most of us. No matter how independent we think we are, we've benefited from family help, from neighbors, from people in the workplace. We all benefit, we just don't always acknowledge it. And there's a group of women who looked at psychological development, and they said they don't think that the end point of psychological development is that you gain your independence. They think it's that you learn to become successfully interdependent. That's really where we need to head. in our lives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When we talk about interdependence and people building relationships, you- a lot of, at least in New York State, a lot of relationships of care are a paid caregiver, doing something with somebody because it's in their plan, going up. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. But how is interdependent intentional living different than that?
Well, I think, again, it's relationship based, so it's based on really knowing another person, really appreciating what's important to them, what they value, what they want to do, and responding to it. And having that person respond as well. I mean, so you can have a relationship with the caregiver and not just see them as paid staff. So that's really what it does. It allows us to really relate to each other as people. There's a woman that writes about her daughter's disability, and she talked about how they called the daughter's caregiver the relationship with no name. Because you don't really, they're not family, they're not friends, they don't feel like paid people. It's hard to qualify that and say what it is, but it's really just a relationship.
Now, you were talking about different communities getting involved. You were talking about faith communities and different things like that. When you say get involved, what do you mean? Because a lot of people think of structure. There's an event, you go to the event, and that's what you mean by getting involved, or there's an action or something like that. Because you were talking about the staffing crisis, different thing.
Right.
What does getting involved mean in this situation?
Well, getting involved can mean events. It can mean coming to one of our events to see what's going on. But it could also mean a faith community saying, we would like to have this intentional community of care ministry going on, so that we meet with people, that we have maybe a soup day where everyone gets together and you understand what the people's needs are around you and what their need for friendship is and what their need for any kind of support is, or their need for socialization and fun. So it would be great if different faith communities not only supported what we're doing, but looked at how they could do this. And I know many faith communities do a great job with this. But we want to make sure that people with disabilities are always included in what goes on in these communities.
All right, well, that brings me to another question. I want to ask, I'm going to stop for a second though and ask our audience if they have any questions, comments, is there anything? Just want to stop and ask them.
Janet has her hand up.
Janet, is there any?
Hi, yeah, I'd be interested in the art one, but the thing is, I don't have a car. Would somebody be able to pick me up and take me out there?
That's something we have to work on, and I think that we can probably make arrangements for that.
Okay.
I know it's far, but we'll figure something out about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, Janet.
yeah.
And what's interesting about that, and I'm not making any promises, Janet, but that's an example of somebody reaching out and saying, hey, I can't get there. Is there any way somebody can help me get
Right.
there?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's caring, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think people just don't think about that. They don't think that somebody can't get somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a very real problem for many people.
No, that's really, it's such a radical way of thinking. I know it may not seem like that to some people, but it really is a radical way of thinking. And I think Sophia's got her hand up.
I guess I was muted. Sorry about that. Well, I guess I was thinking about things from, I'm often on the caregiving side of, I guess if that's sort of the thing. I really like this thing you talk about. Like, I think about, I had recently started to think, well, I have these like caring relationships, and they are, it's more like we're bounded together by like a situation where the need of care, but care goes both ways. It does go both ways. It's not
Right.
it's a mutual relationship, but what each of us is providing is somewhat different. Um, but I was thinking about sometimes for me, and I've had, just because of my own life circumstances and things like that growing up, I can be overwhelmed and by other people, by too many needs, right?
Yes.
There's lots of needs. And I um and I think that sometimes that's one of the reasons why people don't make friendships with people with disabilities, or why people don't get engaged in kind of these kind of relationships. And I, um, but one of the things that I find really intriguing about what you're talking about, and one of the things that I think um, is really important about the conversation, and I cannot see your face, Maggie. I would love to see your
Oh.
face.
Oh, you're,
But,
you have to.
Let's see, am
move
I-
a little
Yeah,
bit
that
right
would be
there.
great. Sorry, I'm talking to you
Right
and
now.
Mike, and
You
I'm like,
moved
oh,
a
I
little
can't
bit
see.
back.
Chair
Is
was sliding.
yes, it does slide. Is connection and community. So when we have a thing called circles of support, and when they are an actual community of people around someone, when it's not just one person or a couple people, but the circle itself is a community itself, then you're sharing together. And
Yes.
that's a really different situation from feeling like, it's never true that you're the only person that people call. But if you feel that way and you don't have that connection, not only to the person maybe with a disability, but that person back to you, and then the connection with other people who also care, and that you're all caring for one another. So I think that part of it is really important. I think we get in our world, for some reason right now, I know there's a lot of asks, and there's a lot of I think a lot of people feel very busy. And the idea of, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I believe that some of that is counterbalanced when you actually have community. And when you actually have community with other people, so that you're not alone it's not a singular kind of relationship. And that then it becomes lighter. It doesn't become so heavy. And then Janet, like asking for a ride, it doesn't just have to be me going, dang, I wish I could give him the ride, because
Yeah.
because I love Janet, and I love, she's an amazing artist, and I would love to see her be part of that. But it becomes like more of us being able to do that. And when that happens, it's not just giving, you're receiving as well, and you get to be a part of things. But I just find that that's sort of like just from my long time being in community with people, and kind of looking at this issue of our caring community, and how do we care for everybody in
Mhm.
for everyone, and my mentors have been people with disabilities, and that's why I'm a part, not because of what partly it's be the opportunity to give something, but it's a lot the opportunity to receive something, and to be in reality, which is that we all need assistance. We all do at some point, and it's all different, and everybody has something to offer, and when we're in it together, it's a lot less overwhelming than when we're in it by ourselves.
I think you make an excellent point, Sophia. And I do believe that people often are afraid to get into even the caregiving field because they feel overwhelmed by it, or they recognize that they can't, they feel like they're a lifeline for someone and they get scared by it, I think. And so the idea of having a supportive network around you is so important. There's somebody you can call. I know when my daughter is in self-direction, but she lives with us, but when we first started self-direction, we had a big circle of support. And it was just great to have people witnessing what Carly was going through and what her life was like and what happened every day with her. And just knowing that people were sensitive to what was going on was, it was really important, and she loved it. We always did dinners, and then COVID happened, and we haven't even gotten back from that yet. But in contrast, when I was young, my father had a stroke, and my mother and I cared for him until he passed away, and it was very isolating, and nobody really knew what we were doing. I mean, they just didn't know. No, we just did it. And it was scary sometimes.
Yeah, so it's such a different, I think that it's having had that circle experience, I think, and I don't know, Mike, how you feel about this, like in self-advocacy, because it's not just people without disabilities supporting people with disabilities, it's also people with disabilities supporting people without disabilities and other people with disabilities as well. Like it's a
Right.
community, it's a circle,
Right, since we're having a conversation here, it seems, what this has me thinking about is just the old wise tales about, certain people are supposed to do certain things. Oh, we don't do that type of thing.
Right.
I think, we've been so systemized and compartmentalized that we look at people as a role instead of as a community. I remember, I'll just say this and then we'll keep talking. But I remember when my grandmother was getting older, we had stopped meeting every week for dinner. Well, that was a thing that the relatives would meet for dinner.
Right.
And then one day she said, yeah, well, I can't remember the exact words, this was years ago, but she said something to the effect of, what, you don't wanna come see me? What happened to us getting together like we usually do? And she
Yeah.
kind of called the family out on not doing what we regularly did to keep the community going per se. And then the family started meeting again. And that's the old saying, the matriarchs and patriarchs
Yeah.
keeping things going. And I think this is the same kind of thinking, to build a community, you actually have to be a community,
Right.
and not just, well, this is my lot in life. Maybe I'll jump over every once in a while and make sure that you're all right. We've become very, very self-focused, which in some ways is good, but in some ways that can have a negative effect.
It really
So I
can.
like the way this kind of tips that on its back kind of, and says, what about another way of thinking?
Yeah, and again, in that study that I talked about earlier about relationships being the thing that help people to be happy and thrive, they talk about the really important idea of freedom comes from paying attention to things and responding and making little small sacrifices for people pretty frequently. And that's where freedom and good feelings come from. And I thought that was interesting because we don't always think that way. I think we think
No.
that freedom will come from putting up boundaries and not getting involved with people.
A lot of people say to me, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I got a lot of work to do with myself, but they'll say to me, wow, you seem to want to do a lot of things for people. And I'm like, well, isn't that what life is all about? You know, and they say, oh, that's really interesting. We don't see that a lot. And I'm like, we all breathe in, we breathe out, we have blood running through our veins. If we can't help each other out someday, what are we here for? Just to be like robots, you
Yeah,
know?
I know. You know, a few weeks ago, or maybe more, Marie Malinowski was doing something with her church, and we went. It was a movie night where they were talking about community, and they showed The Blind Side, that movie from years ago about the football player who was raised by the family who took him in. And I had seen it years ago, but when I saw it this time, I was so struck by, in the movie, the moment that this mom decided to, you know, she needed to do something, and she saw this young man walking at night, and they stopped to ask, she was with her family, they asked him if he needed a ride. And he said, no, he was just going like across the campus of the school they attended. And she knew in that moment that the building he was going to was not really open, and he probably didn't have anywhere to go. And she had him get in the car and she took him home. And I know that we can't all do that all the time, but what struck me was she saw a need and she responded. She didn't stop and think, well, I don't know how, I think I have too much to do, or I don't know how this will impact me legally, or I'm not sure how my kids will feel about this. She just saw a need and she responded.
Yeah, these days it seems like, you know, we have to get our digital task manager out and
Right.
say, I don't know, you know, we have to look and see if it's in the cloud
Yeah.
or something, you know, before we make a decision. And, you know,
That's right.
that, you know, that story was a good example of taking life as it goes, kind of.
Yeah, being responsive. Just knowing, like, I'm here. If you need me, I'm here.
Yeah. You know, it also gets me thinking of with a lot of people, with disabilities, I hear people saying thank you for things that, and I've done this too. Thank you for things that are ordinary. And I had somebody one time say, why are you thanking me all the time? And I was like, and I was like, well, to be honest, I'm thanking you because most people don't do what you do, you know, and that got me thinking about a lot. And they said, well, they should. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
intentional community, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah, and the intentional piece is, it is important because we are called to think and be aware and be responsive to people. So I think it sometimes intentional thinks that we're gonna be told to act a certain way or do a
Yeah,
certain thing
yeah,
as part of this
yeah.
community, but it's not that. It's more an idea of being focused and aware and connected.
yeah. And that this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, good. We still have some time here, but I wanna
Okay.
make sure I get up to the computer and share your documents. Cause you got some
Oh,
good things
okay.
going on, but we'll do that in a couple minutes.
okay. Right.
And now, how do you see this change people? When you've seen this in your life, how has this been a change maker for people?
I think people start to feel good about themselves when they're involved with other people. I think that it broadens all of our experiences. I think we all learn gratitude from being with other people. And I'm not saying this to say, oh, I'm glad my life isn't like that. You know, it's more like you just appreciate the nice times you can have with people. And you appreciate the positive energy that's in a room, like when people are creating, when people are doing art, or when they're enjoying food. There's just such positive energy that you feel good.
Yeah, these days we can sometimes be kind of regimented and have a goal
Yeah.
and, okay, how do you
Right.
achieve these goals? You see the videos online all the time. what are the miraculous steps you take to
Yeah.
achieve these goals?
Right,
And what it seems to me that you're saying is just being with people, you know, can really push forward what you want to achieve.
yeah, and it's so important, and we all, I mean, I know I fall into it, think, oh, I shouldn't, I need to get home, I need to get this done, I need to be working on something. And really, we need to be working on being part of life with everyone.
Yeah. You know, it kind of convicts me a little bit in that I can be kind of, okay, I'm gonna put this on a calendar. It's gotta be in this color because I'll forget about it.
Right,
And you know, I still end up forgetting about it, but
yeah,
but no, you know, taking a step back and saying, what, taking stock in what you're saying is taking stock in what really matters.
yeah. You know,
Yeah.
it was, I was talking with a woman the other day who actually happens to be part of this group, and, of doing the soup Saturday. She's a marvelous cook, and she's hosted us a few times in our planning, before we brought it out to the larger community. And, I was talking to her about needing something from, you know, she said she had gotten something at the store. And we're sort of casual friends at this point, but she called me and said,
That's okay.
my phone's ringing, sorry.
It's all right.
She called me and said, oh, I was at the store and I bought this for you. If you want it, you can get it from me. If not, I'll take it back. And I thought, wow. You know, and I was thinking I should get out to the store to get that, but I don't have time today. But she has my back on this.
Yeah.
You know, it was a little thing she did, but it was like, I felt so embraced
Yeah,
by somebody.
Yeah.
And we can all do that, right?
yeah. So. What I want to do now is share these documents. So let me, if we can mute my video, Kat, while I'm writing up here to share these documents, that would be great. Give me a second to.
Just give me a thumbs up when you want me to unmute.
Mike, I can't hear you.
Just a second. Oh, boy, I don't want to do that. I wanted to stay muted. Mute me again.
Okay. There we go. Okay, just needs you to unmute now.
Okay,
Okay,
go again.
okay, so Art with Friends, it's our first program that we're doing. Saturday, June 24th, from 1 to 2:30 p.m. at Cradle Beach Camp. You'll see the art bungalow and there'll be signs, but you'll see it as you drive into the camp. It's one of the first buildings. And it's fully accessible, of course, and I need to emphasize that we need you to RSVP because we have to be prepared with supplies and seating arrangements and know how many people will be coming. But we're really looking forward to it. It's a beautiful space for art. There's an indoor space and then there's a really large deck where you can see the lake from, and we can use that too for art. And so we're really it's going to be really good, and we're going to do it monthly. So we'll post the next date soon. You can go to our website and see these postings, transformingcare.org. But and we'll send emails once we have people's contact information. We'll be letting you know through email also that we're doing it.
Okay,
But we welcome people.
okay, that sounds great. And you can see on the screen that the information as well. I wanted to show that. And then. Let's see. I want to stop this and get the other document here. Let's see. Oh, it's sideward. Let me see here. Right.
So here's another event. It is July 15th at Gigi's Playhouse. We are getting together for salad and conversation about this intentional community of care and our practices and what we hope to achieve. So again, we really need you to RSVP so we have enough food. And then I will get directions to you about where to go. But Gigi's has graciously offered their space, and they have a very nice kitchen and plenty of space to gather. So we're really looking forward to that.
Okay,
And eventually we'll do cooking classes where we'll be cooking and then eating what we make. So, but that's down the road.
and we can share these flyers digitally as well. So we'll make sure that these are shared and the people get them.
Great.
Are there any closing thoughts? We got like 2 minutes.
Actually, if anybody is on who can go back to their faith communities or their friends and encourage them to make contact with us and get involved, we would really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining. We have these quarterly. We will be inviting you again. Thank you very much.